Lace 'em up, let's start the show. We're digging in with Tripp. 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 We're digging in with Tripp today, yeah.
It's certainly been a minute. I would like to welcome everybody back to Digging In. And I've needed to take time the last 4+ months to accept, recognize, and do the work, and it never ends, but of what digging in means for me. I've asked in so many episodes to so many of the greats how they define digging in. Well, for me, through my own poor decision making in New York City that culminated April 26th, digging in is surrendering to the fact that I'm an alcoholic, something that I fought for many, many years. And I finally surrendered to the fact that I am. You're never cured. You got to dig in on a daily basis, day at a time. And there is a solution if you have acceptance and you're willing to do the work and be teachable and listen to the people who have been much more successful in recovery than me. A guy by the name of Brian Spitzbergen, who has been a central part of the Jamie Daniels Foundation here in Detroit. I was introduced to Brian. He has 36 years of sobriety. I was introduced to Brian thanks to my great friend Ken Daniels, a longtime voice with former dig-in guest Mickey Redmond. And Brian has spearheaded my recovery and the 12-step program that it's an anonymous one, but one that I am unbelievably grateful to be a part of. And that's what I focused on these last 4 months. I want to thank from the very bottom of my heart. The only way that I can even, in a small way, properly express my gratitude to the Carolina Hurricanes, to Bally Sports, to all the great current, past Hurricanes players, hockey players, period, and the Hurricanes fans, the huge Caniacs. When I needed support most, and did I ever need it, to build momentum, I saw, I felt, I gained so much strength and support from all of your support. It really helped me put one foot in front of the other and to take the necessary steps to work towards building a solution. Thank you. I'm so grateful to be on this journey because it's my cross to bear, and it's been a wonderful journey already. I can't wait to get back to Carolina. I'm so fortunate to come back to Carolina in a few weeks, start broadcasting games again. But the greatest way that I can pay back your support that I will never forget is to stay on this path, which I will do. It's a day at a time gig, but I will do it. We are going to dig in, and I'm going to let you know what happened, how I battled alcoholism, what happened in New York City, and what it's been like since. It's something that creates some definite nervousness on my part, but ultimately, even though I'm very early in sobriety, I just celebrated 4 months. Last drink I chose to take, poor decision, beyond poor decision that it was April 26th in New York City. But I'm choosing to do this episode because there's a chance it might help somebody else who's experiencing a similar struggle. And for that reason and that reason alone, it's worthwhile. And gives me the courage to I'm just another alcoholic. I'm just another bozo on the bus, but an opportunity maybe to make a positive difference. So thank you once again for all of your support. Can't wait to get back to doing my job and focusing on that I'm so grateful to have. And let's dig in with Brian Spitsbergen, who just July 30th celebrated 36 years of sobriety. I've missed digging in. I hope you guys have too. Brian, I want to welcome you to Digging In.
Thank you, Tripp. Pleasure to be here.
Boy, this is special. It's August 31st, and I want to congratulate you. It was 31 days ago, July 30th. Just extraordinary. You celebrated 36 years of sobriety.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate that.
And as you've encouraged me with all of the work that we've done the last 4+ months, that with the hope that just maybe that sharing my story might just help someone struggling that can identify with some of my truths, that maybe this podcast can be of service. And I'm hesitant to do so, but it's an opportunity. And so for someone like you that got sober at 16 years old, maybe you can navigate the waters of what you want to discuss.
Yeah, and I want to say, I think that it's amazing that even with that hesitancy, that you feel a sense of importance to, to reach out and help other people. So I think that's really amazing that you're willing and ready to do that. So I'm honored to be a part of this. And, I just thinking about your life and your history, like, you have a unique opportunity to maybe reach out and help people in a way that has an important message to it, that really speaks to a person who, had alcohol impact him in a way that was, had some unique qualities to it, but I think things that there are a lot of people that could relate to it. And I just wonder, for example, maybe if we started with, like some of your experience with, how you got here in terms of, being in this space now and 4 months of really hard work.
Well, I think where I would start is that my conception, my view, and first of all, I'm not a unique alcoholic, just another bozo on the bus, but my perception of an alcoholic had always been someone who drinks every day. And that's never been my story. I would oftentimes go weeks and months without it. I got a late start because I was chasing my hockey dreams. I look back to that period of time through my teenage years and into my early 20s. I only made it for a handful of days in the league, but it was that self-drive, that willingness to put me first, that, it was a central part of being able to put on an NHL jersey. Well, ultimately, now that I know that alcohol is just a symptom of a disease of the mind that is all about self-will, I've got to go all the way back then. Then, in my 20s, I was given a job by the Hurricanes owner at the time, Pete Carmanis. 24 years old, I'm the color commentator for an NHL hockey team. Traveling around with these National Hockey League players, it's the life. And in your 20s too, if you go out and have a big night, I hope this changes. I hope it's already changing. But people sort of look the other way. And I can look at all sorts of countless examples as we've given this a hard look. The meetings, the 12-step program that is based upon attraction, not promotion. And I go to meetings each and every day and will continue to do so. I really look back and all the gems at the meetings that, once you go from being a cucumber to a pickle, you can't go back to being a cucumber. And I look, even in the late 90s, I had already made the transformation to a pickle, just without consequences.
It's interesting that you bring up consequence, because I think that what I've gathered from your story is that you have, where you experienced some success, like being able to connect to and understand consequence was probably a little bit difficult for you. And you did have previous experience with sobriety prior to now. And I wonder if maybe you could share a little about that.
Yeah, the roaring 2000s, performer. I really sort of took on the role of, as a performer. And I had a trust fund. My grandfather was on the original Model T production line. He was a color commentator in the NHL. And my sponsor, who I will protect his anonymity, of course, but he's still my sponsor to this day. He's been unconditionally supportive. Sure, he got this from one of the meetings, but he said that typically you're not willing to make a decision until your health or wealth are impacted. And so my first really significant step was in 2009, when my wealth was completely impacted. And that created just enough acceptance and willingness that I thrust myself into that I was 100% an alcoholic, and B, once I surrendered to that, there's actually, if you're willing to do the work, an easy solution. And so I did what was very, very important, critical, paramount to building a foundation. I did 90 meetings in the first 90 days in 2009. I probably did 110. My life got better. I had 5.5 years sobriety. During that time span, one of my brothers, I remember I was on the bike getting ready to do game 80, might have even been a short. It was the second to last game of the year against the New York Rangers, and I saw on the ticker on the news that my brother Timmy had been arrested, accused of espionage in Venezuela. And it became a global story. Why do I tell this story? Because I was entrenched in recovery at that point in time. I was using the tools, getting outside of myself, leaning on my higher power, and which always turned me off, because recovery is a spiritual solution. But any type of spirituality used to turn me off the moment I walked in the door. So at this point, I'm probably 2 years since I had taken my last drink at that point, August 24th, 2009. And through a lot of great fortune, but relying on the tools of recovery, my brother got out of one of the worst prisons in the world. And life got better. My friendships got better. I think that my performance got better at my job. And then I made a really colossal mistake. I fell in love with a woman. We had a lot of great times together. And I chose that relationship and holding on to that relationship above my sobriety. I actually thought, this is my truth, Brian, I actually thought that I somehow would be more charming. I'd be more appealing. I'd be more attractive with a couple of drinks. That I'd be more James Bond. And that insecurity, that pride, ego, that fear, it's all fear-based. What I should have done is I should have recognized that and thrown myself right back into the center of the herd of the meetings that I went to. I didn't. I stayed away. And then we hear it all the time, the cunning, baffling, powerful disease, the mind. It starts to make you think, and this was in 2015, that I could drink normally again. I was honest about it. You know, my first drinks in 2015 were with my mom and dad in Florida, and I picked up right where I left off. And that, it's taken 7 years to get back. Sure, you'll get to it in a minute. You know, what happened in New York City, the extraordinary support of the hockey world, the Carolina Hurricanes, Bally Sports, but by the grace of my higher power, I was given the gift of desperation after going back out in 2015 in April of this year.
One thing that I think when I mentioned unique, I think to clarify too, like, you know, you've talked about, like, you know, you weren't an everyday kind of drinker, but like, I think that there's a lot of, if you look at the history of your life, one of the things that I think sounds like you've experienced a lot of is what I'll call the mental obsession over numerous things that, in a way, as things became more difficult, it sounds like the obsession, you know, to resolve feelings became more evident and more prominent in your life. And I wonder if maybe you could speak a little bit about, like, how that progressed.
Yeah. Well, I'm very excited, and you pushed me into the commitment of getting a dog here in a couple months. Frank, named after Sinatra, is in full-blown training right now. Why do I bring that up? I love Frank Sinatra. Who doesn't? American icon. One of my favorite songs is My Way. And I love the song My Way. But my way, whether it was thinking that I could take a drink successfully, whether I could put together some grand gesture to try to control a relationship that wasn't there, my way of thinking is an insane way of thinking.
It sounds like in a lot of ways you got sicker as time went on.
I got much sicker. And, you know, it's the miraculous program that we're so proud to be a part of is based on attraction, not promotion. And there are traditions. So I want to make sure that I'm supremely respectful of that. That's beyond paramount. But yeah, I absolutely got sicker. And the book that we read talks about it can lead you to death or the gates of insanity. I've seen firsthand the depths it can take you to, even when you're not picking up the drink.
So prior to your re-engagement now into sobriety, did you, you know, thinking about the text and the literature too that you're referring to, you know, a lot of times in recovery, people end up in a very dark place before things get better. How did that, you know, you re-engaged drinking, spent about 7 years. You know, how did that play out in terms of experiencing that progression, you know, of the obsession, the dark place? Like, what was that like?
These are my truths. A couple years into it, I lost that relationship, which was a devastating loss, painful loss. And I initially, brief spurts, started going back to meetings, but that circumstance wasn't going to make me ready. I got through that stretch, and 2018, and my drinking continued. It didn't just continue. It had all of the progressions that we hear about every day. And it's still, you know, I never became a daily drinker, but the blackouts, the going from being a jolly drinker when I was a younger guy to not being so jolly at times. All of those yets. I love certain acronyms. I love them all, but some of my favorites are for yet, you're eligible to. I love fear, face everything and recover, as opposed to F everything and not. And so while I would be considered a periodic alcoholic, one that doesn't drink every day, those episodes got worse and worse and worse. I was surrounded by tremendously supportive friends an unbelievably supportive employer. But I was so stubborn, competitive, and all about, truthfully, hard to say it out loud, but ego and pride, that it was gonna take a circumstance like I'm sure you're gonna get to it at some point here shortly in New York City that was a gift to beat me down and smash any thought whatsoever that I could drink normally.
And the connection there, I think this is a good place to talk about New York. So New York was a pivotal incident for you, and I think there comes a time for every person that is alcoholic or addicted and struggles with recovery where you have that moment that's kind of your moment. And so how would you describe, not just the incident, but like how was it devastating to you?
Well, I do believe that it's amazing how far down the scale you can go before you're ready. There's always another run. And we had a game. It was the only time in all of my years broadcasting, approaching 25 years, that we ever stayed in the same hotel for all three New York-based teams. And it was the Devils, the Islanders. We were staying in New York the whole time. So that was Saturday, Sunday afternoon. And then a day off and playing the Rangers on Tuesday. And I hadn't been out and had a drink in several weeks. Doesn't make me any less of an alcoholic. That just happens to be my story. And I got back from the game on Sunday. I was tired. I wasn't even planning on doing anything. And I was significantly considering, I was watching a show on, I think HBO, about the building of the Laker dynasty, Winning Time. And a wonderful woman who I had met had asked me to go for dinner. And she was coming in from out of town to have dinner. And it wasn't going to be until late on Sunday night. And I remember I went and had a drink at a bar, just to, not healthy, but to try to build energy, comfort. And it was a Jameson, and I never drank Jameson. There's a couple of things I never drank that are part of this story. It was a small glass. And I remember saying to myself as I was sipping it, this glass is way too small. And I'm trying to somehow get a buzz that I'm never gonna get. An impossible dream. I remember just that small glass of Jameson on Sunday night, knowing that I had ignited, because I am responsible. I knew that. I was familiar with the 12-step recovery program, again, that I'll protect, but I'm responsible for that first drink. And I chose that first drink, and I've never had a better living, breathing example of how different I am as an alcoholic as opposed to a normal drinker, because it ignited a phenomenon of craving. And that was Sunday night. That led to Sunday night. Monday, I could have licked my wounds. It's just an off day. There were no hockey commitments. And I got back on the horse. It led to having dinner with she's a wonderful woman, on Monday night. And I woke up Tuesday morning. I just mentioned the Yets a few minutes ago. I went to the morning skate at Madison Square Garden. As a matter of fact, I still have, this showed up in my dry clean when I got back from New York. This is my press pass from April 26th in Madison Square Garden. I walked back with my partner, Mike Maniscalco. I had no designs on drinking. It's a game day. I said goodbye to Mike in the hotel lobby, and I went upstairs. I was terribly hungover. I had a lot of anxiety, depression that went along with, the end of those drinking binges. And I chose to do something. I mean, an awfully, to put it mildly, poor choice. To do something I never thought I would ever do. And, it's New York City, Brian. There's Advil on every street corner.
Right.
And in my room, there was a bottle of tequila, just part of the, every road, tequila, vodka, and gin. And I looked, whatever money I had spent on Sunday and Monday, I looked at Alligator Arms. The gin was the cheapest. And my father had said to me at one point, because I had never, ever drank gin. And he had said, Tripp, gin's like climbing a cliff. It builds a false sense of confidence, and then without warning, you're in the deep abyss. So I've made this completely insane again choice, and a horribly poor choice to calm my head. I was doing my preparation for the game. It was about 1 o'clock in the afternoon. And I took a swig of the gin. And I took another swig of the gin. I was still up. I was doing my game notes. I passed out. I missed my production call. The 7 o'clock game is every day at 3 o'clock. I woke up and it was just before game time. My producer called. I had already missed my coach's interview with Rod Brindamore. I knew the gravity of the situation. All these years I prided myself, I never missed a game. And I think I missed one a couple of years ago because I had no voice, one or two, but I'd never missed a game. I was missing a game because of my decision making. I knew my job was on the line. I kept drinking during the game. Some wonderful people called me. Jeff Genther, who's the head of our Valley Sports region. He hasn't just been the head of the region, but he's been just an extraordinary good friend to me. Amy Brindamore called me, Rod's wife. I was drunk. It was at that point too that I somehow thought that I was drunk, that tweeting would be a good decision. I never would have done that with clarity of thought and mind. Team was exceptional. They won the game. Mike Sondheim, head of public relations, been my friend for over 20 years, reached out to me. Donnie Waddell, and they won a huge game, they won the division. Did they want me to, should they pick me up on the way to the plane? And I said, no, I'm gonna sleep this off. I'll fly back tomorrow. So you ask about the moment. It's 10:30 on a Tuesday night. I figure, very, very, very good chance that my love and passion, nearly a quarter of a century or just about when you factor in my 2 years in the system as a minor league player, probably coming to an end. I could have hit the streets of New York. I had room service, because Amy Brindamore convinced me to get room service to put some food in my stomach, as did Jeff Genther. Nothing left in the minibar. And room's totally dark. And I looked around and I said to myself, this isn't working for me. And I stopped. It's about 10:30 on the night of April 26th. It was a horrible night of physical and mental detox by myself. I do want to mention that aside from the just extraordinary support of the Hurricanes, my longtime friend Chris Drury, who was the general manager of the Rangers, his team had just lost the division to the Hurricanes. He sent people over to my room. I woke up. Obviously, my phone's blowing up. I got a call from Don at maybe 7 o'clock in the morning. And I knew I had to answer that. And Don hasn't just been my boss for a long time. He's been a dear friend. And he was unbelievable. He said, how are you doing? And I was defeated. I was emotional. And he said, hey, let's get you on a plane back to Raleigh and we'll meet in a couple of days. Walking down, we had been there, it's now Wednesday. We checked in with the team on the previous Friday. Walking down to pay my incidental bills. The incidental bill, which was significant. Team's gone. I've just made this choice. I did that morning because it's blown up my tweets for obvious reasons. I did decide to put out a tweet that just was horribly humbling, depressing. You know, on the night that all the boys, you know, won the division, I was a distraction. But I knew simultaneously that no matter what, if I got fired, if I was able to hold on to my job, I knew I had surrender. I knew I was an alcoholic. And even in that depression, walking out, that beyond immense disappointment in myself, I knew there was a solution because I had experienced it before.
Yeah, and I wonder if, you know, maybe this is a good opportunity. Like, it seemed like things, you know, you had previous experience with recovery. You're back in it again, and you're working hard. Like, what could you talk a little bit about, you know, what's been different?
I'm not insecure. Well, first of all, I canceled all my summer plans to build it brick by brick correctly. But the single biggest difference is there are two. I'll start, they're both indescribably important for me in my journey. But the first one is I've thrown myself into the fellowship, you know, not with just both hands, but with both feet. It's like when I'm calling hockey games. I only backed up one game in the NHL for this Hurricanes team that has been so good to take the next step. It's these painful lessons and that power of identification that they've experienced together that hopefully can thrust them forward to take the next step. The meetings that I go to, you're an alcoholic. The meetings where there isn't anything that I can say that somebody hasn't experienced something similar. I remember I went to I said that I was going to come back here because it built 5.5 years and do 90 meetings in 90 days. And Rod Brindamore, you know, Hurricanes fans see him as a Stanley Cup winning captain and an NHL Coach of the Year that has changed the complete trajectory of the Hurricanes franchise. He's my closest friend in the organization. And he really will go to the ends of the earth for people he believes in and he cares about. I remember he said to me in July when I was, you know, the last time I chose to take a drink was April 26th. So the end of my 90 days, you know, of the 90 and 90 was July 27th. And Rod called me one morning, goes, what are you going to do after, you know, you finish the 90 and 90? And I go, I'm going to start another 90 and 90. I will always be a meeting a day guy. It's a one day at a time thing, but because why wouldn't I? To get out of myself, to get the proper and I love going to the meetings.
What do you like about it?
I love that I wouldn't sit here and say to you that, I'm not going to sit here and say to you that I'm grateful that I'm an alcoholic, because of course I wish I could drink normally. I can't. But because I'm an alcoholic, it has exposed me to the 12 steps, which are the very best blueprint that I've ever been exposed to of being the best version of myself, which ultimately is getting out of myself. So it's finding a higher power. It's taking a long, hard look at my past. It's identifying, and we've talked about it, my numerous character defects, and then ultimately being of service and making a difference, which is the very biggest reason that I've chosen to express it publicly here with digging in. I do want to say that the very, very biggest difference, partner, is, you know, I've seen these hockey players that will point to their faith, and somehow, optically, some people see that as a weakness, not a strength. Where I go for meetings is a spiritual solution. It's not faith-based, it's not religious-based, but I will tell you that if I'm available, this is what's really different. If I'm available I've got to do the work, but there are signs all over the place about what my higher power wants from me.
I think you touched one last thing. I think you touched on the fact that of course, nobody comes into this wanting to be alcoholic
Or on a winning streak.
However, do you see? So with that in mind, I think sometimes public perception is that people, just come to terms with the fact and are grateful that, they understand that they're an alcoholic. I hear you saying that that's not necessarily the case, which I agree with. But I will say, like, when you think about the future and what you've learned thus far, where do you see the benefits? What are the benefits of recovery?
Simple. Being of service and continuing to build a connection with my higher power, who I choose to call God. I do want to share. This story is so special. It's not a story, it's a gift. So I came back to Raleigh on Wednesday. I mean, I was physically, mentally destroyed. I knew I had a meeting with Don, with the team that I'll keep private on Friday. All I can say is that Don was unbelievably supportive. I reached out on Thursday to our mutual friend, Kenny Daniels, the voice of the Detroit Red Wings with Mickey Redmond. Ken's a dear friend. I was very aware of the foundation that you've been such a central part of, the Jamie Daniels Foundation, in memory of his son, Jamie, that was lost to opioid addiction. And I had no credibility at this point. I had just drank on the job. But I knew I wanted to get back and do my 90 meetings in 90 days. I wanted to work through all of the inhibitors, the obstacles, my ego, pride, all of these things that had been holding me back. And I reached out to Ken and I said, Ken, do you have anybody in Detroit? I'd love to be with my mom that can really spearhead my recovery. He immediately was of service and gave me your number. That's how it all came to be. I went in, as I mentioned, and had a meeting I'll never forget with Don. Don put his arm around me, and he knew that I had to do the work. And I haven't achieved anything. I'm in early sobriety here. I'm just over 4 months since I made that decision to take my last drink. But I was packing up on the weekend to leave Raleigh. I wanted to get the heck out of there, and as much as it stunk missing the playoffs, that's why we all do what we do. Players play, coaches coach, managers manage. That's the fans, enjoy playoff hockey, of course, the very most, and I enjoy calling games the very most in the postseason. But you throw the ball over the fence, you got to go get it. Mm-hmm. So I knew I had to get out of Raleigh very, very quickly, so I wouldn't be I had already been an immense distraction to the team. And I was packing up on Saturday. I was hustling because I had to get out of there. My dad's birthday, he passed away almost 4 years ago, would have been that Sunday, May 1st. And my closest friend here from Michigan, people on social media and what, they know that we've gone after trying to catch this swordfish. We've caught every fish except the elusive swordfish. I wasn't able to go with him on that Saturday for obvious reasons, but he went down in Florida and caught a 200-pound swordfish. Wow. And I lit right up, because for me, in my own personal relationship with my higher power, it was like my higher power with my dad saying, hey, good decision. Glad you're back where you should be, beginning this road again. Now it's up to me to do the work and put it into action. And Brian, you mentioned that I've asked you often about how do you define a moment of clarity? Well, I believe 10:30 on that Tuesday night in my New York hotel room, disaster in there, that was my moment of clarity. But it's not a moment of clarity if I don't put it into action. Follow the guidance of the people that have been much, much, infinitely more successful in sobriety than I have. Be teachable. Don't question. Just put it into action.
So I hear humility, I hear action, and and I certainly hear helping others is kind of being your foundation at this point.
Well, first of all, my own way of thinking, my will, doing it my way, I'm gonna love my dog Frank, named after Sinatra. And I mean, my gosh, bucket list would be, if he was still alive, to meet Frank Sinatra. But this is one particular area. Two things. Frank said, I feel sorry for people that don't drink. They get up in the morning knowing that's the best they're gonna feel all day. And much more importantly, I did it my way. Well, my way has led me to a very, very significant rock bottom. As we tape this on August 31st, I know when I left New York City, I can earnestly say I was defeated. This is the only thing I can think about in life that you actually have to surrender to win, which is a foreign concept to me. And I knew that even without the immense gratitude that I get to go back to work in a couple of weeks and I get to call hockey games, that if there had been another consequence, that I threw the ball over the fence and I wasn't going to get to come back, it wasn't going to change the journey that I'm on. Because A, I want it, and my sobriety is going to come first. And I just think about all of the support from players, of course, my employers. Governor Roy Cooper, right when I was right at my rock bottom, put out a tweet in support. Countless current players, past players, and the Hurricanes fans of mine. They helped me put one foot in front of the other. Thank you. When I was just trying to build momentum and turn the aircraft carrier around. Brian, the best way that I can reward that support is to stay on this journey. But it wouldn't work if I didn't want it for myself.
And as they say, we got to give it away to keep it, right?
And give it away to keep. So ultimately, the fact that hey, this is who I am. I'm an alcoholic. I have full acceptance. I have full surrender. If I don't keep doing the things on a daily basis that put that medicine into my head and it's into action, that this is who I am, this is my cross to bear, this mind will start thinking quite a bit differently. That's what happened in 2015. But what's different is the absolute best part of it is that ultimately, after it being a selfish program and building it correctly early on, your 36 years of sobriety, it's one of service. It's one of giving it away to keep it. Yeah. I've already had a bunch of unbelievable opportunities to identify with another person that is, facing some of the same adversity. It's the best feeling in the world. My former dig-in guest, my cousin, who has been tremendously supportive, Jim Farley, who's the CEO of Ford Motor Company. He lost his first cousin, my second cousin, Chris Farley, to addiction. So it's very personal to him. And I often ask him, and I ask him about, Ford. And he really means it when he says, I have an opportunity to serve. Rod Brindamore. I mentioned Donnie Waddell's support, all the people that have supported me. There are just too many to mention right now. But I have a chance. And you only get one crack. You get one crack to be of service. If I take care of my sobriety, and who knows watching today, an opportunity to help someone that maybe is reluctant to surrender, staying away from the solution, and maybe we'll listen or watch, and maybe we'll take that step as a result of this. That's, for me, that's the highlight of the human experience, and that's why my higher power put me on this planet, to serve. And I tell you, I haven't thought like that in certainly last 20 years, because it's very, very hard to admit. At the end of the day, it was all about me. And this gives me a chance to thrust me to the side, but not if I don't put it into action.
Amazing journey, an amazing story, and one that I wonder if at some point we follow up with down the road, just because I think the important, it's not the destination, it's the journey, and that's important, right?
Yes. And I think if it's okay with you, it's a really special way to conclude would be, we're here in Pure, Michigan, and
We are.
we're in Pure, Michigan, and there was a big time storm here on Monday, and where we are, we lost power. And here it is as we tape this. It's Wednesday afternoon. Haven't had any power. That's a wonderful exercise in and of itself about, the powerlessness of not having power. That's a great exercise.
Absolutely.
So I'm sitting here waiting for, my new wonderful friend, Brian, who's taught me so much. I'm just trying to follow the road, and I've been with my mom. We've had time. We'll never get back this summer. And about 5 minutes, maybe less than 5 minutes before you pull in the driveway, power restored. See, that's coincidences are either odd or God's way of talking to you.
Absolutely.
And for me, it's the latter. And so as I move forward, it's up to me to do the work. But with everything that I've been given, I've been asked one thing: to accept that I'm an alcoholic.
Yep.
And on a daily basis, one day at a time. That saying used to make me want to vomit. It's the very centerpiece to recovery.
Yeah.
And so I'm being asked to do one thing, and that's a day at a time, not drink, with the clear-cut solution that you've lived for 36 years. Right there. Right that road paved right in front of me, which ultimately gives me a chance to serve.
And I love the appreciation of, there's higher power or opportunities that are happening every day. It's just, am I capable that day at that time to be in the moment enough to see them, right? And so it's a beautiful opportunity for growth, right, when we can do that. So.
Brian, thank you for this. Thank you for everything. And
Thank you for allowing me to be part of it.
Well, hey, listen, and we're gonna have to unfortunately get you to cheat on Ken Daniels and Mickey Redmond and slide on down to huge Caniacville for some games.
Absolutely.
Caniacs are huge. They'll welcome you with open arms.
I love being in a place where I'm welcome. Yeah. That's great.
Thank you, Brian. I love you.
Thank you, sir.
We're digging in with Tripp today, yeah. Today, yeah. Today, yeah. Today.